If she's always on your mind, even when you haven't heard from her, here's the psychology behind it. You catch yourself thinking about her daily, even though there's no text waiting, no missed call, no hint she's thinking of you at all. Yet she lingers in your head like unfinished business. This isn't romance, it's unresolved attachment. As Marcus Aurelius said, the soul takes on the color of its thoughts. Right now, your attention is empowering someone who isn't actually present in your life. When a woman occupies your thoughts without reaching out, it usually means your imagination has filled the gaps with meaning, hope, and conversations that never happened. Your mind is chasing closure, not connection. Here's the tough truth most guys need to hear. Obsession grows in absence when clarity is missing. If that hits hard, if it tightens something inside or wakes you up, subscribe. Not for entertainment, but for reminders like this. Comfort keeps you stuck. Truth frees you. Once you recognize what's really happening, you stop romanticizing silence and start reclaiming your focus, your time, and your self respect. Number one, you gave her a place she never earned. Here's the clear truth most men never hear, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. If she lives in your mind without contact, without effort, without consistency, it means you assigned her a space she didn't earn. That's not love. That's projection. You're filling silence with meaning it doesn't actually hold. Don't confuse absence with depth. Don't mistake quiet for mystery. Be honest with yourself. If she were thinking about you the way you think about her, you'd know. You wouldn't be guessing, analyzing timestamps, or replaying old chats. Women show care. They communicate, make openings, express interest. That's not a trick. That's reality. Silence isn't a puzzle you need to solve. Silence is the answer. And that answer? It's no. Not maybe, not later, not she's busy. Just no. That's the part most men struggle to accept. So the mind starts working against you. You create stories to protect hope. You tell yourself she's overwhelmed, healing, or afraid of how strongly she feels. That story feels easier than the truth, but it keeps you stuck. Female psychology isn't cruel, it's just clear. Interest sparks movement. Disinterest creates distance. Anything else, that's fantasy. The danger isn't rejection. The real risk is building emotional attachment without mutual effort. That's how men lose balance. That's how attraction fades before it even has a chance to grow. You need to understand this if you want to experience love in a healthy, grounded way. Love grows through shared investment, not silent obsession. Don't put someone on a pedestal who hasn't shown up. Don't assign value where no effort exists. Be disciplined with your attention. Attention is currency, and where you spend it shapes your emotional strength. This is where real psychology comes in, not manipulation, but self mastery. When you stop chasing clarity, clarity naturally shows up. When you stop filling the silence with imagined meaning, the truth becomes obvious. Once you see it, you regain control. You stop pouring energy into someone who hasn't chosen you. You stop romanticizing potential and start respecting reality. That shift alone changes everything: your presence, your confidence, and how women respond to you. Female psychology responds to grounded men, not guys lost in their own thoughts. If you want to truly understand how to fall in love, understand this first. The right connection never makes you guess, chase, or suffer in silence. It meets you halfway. Anything else? That's a lesson, not a destination. 2. You're building a relationship in your head. Here's the uncomfortable but liberating truth you need to hear. and it's time to take it without any sugarcoating. What's not okay is this: you're building a relationship in your mind with someone who isn't even in your life. That's not romance. That's not destiny. That's fantasy. And fantasy is seductive because it feels safe, but it quietly keeps you stuck. It keeps you waiting. It keeps you pouring emotional energy into a place where no real exchange exists. Don't confuse imagination with connection. Be honest. You're not reacting to what's actually happening. You're reacting to what you wish were happening. That's the trap. You tell yourself it feels deep, it feels meaningful, but what you're really in love with isn't her. You're in love with the idea of her, the version you built in your head, the version that always understands you, never lets you down, the version that doesn't exist in real life. That's why it feels so intense. Fantasy has no friction. Reality does. And real love requires friction. It requires presence, effort from both sides, communication, and mutual investment. None of that is happening here, and that's the truth you have to face. If you want to become a high-value man, take a hard look at what's really going on. You're doing all the work in your own head, replaying moments, reading between lines that were never written. Meanwhile, she's out there living her life, either completely unaware or worse, aware and unbothered. That contrast matters. Attraction grows in shared space, not in silent obsession. A man who wants to attract women doesn't build castles in the air. He builds clarity, he builds standards. He builds a life that requires real participation, not imaginary commitment. Don't romanticize absence. Be grounded. Silence isn't depth. Distance isn't desire. Masculine energy is rooted, calm, and present. It doesn't chase ghosts. It doesn't wait in emotional limbo. It doesn't assign importance where no effort exists. You must understand this if you want to grow. The longer you live in fantasy, the longer you delay real connection. Fantasy feels powerful, but it slowly drains you. Reality feels challenging, but it strengthens you. This is where real psychology comes in. Stop living for others and start living for yourself. Female psychology responds to men who are emotionally self-directed, not to men lost in their own projections. When you stop building relationships in your head, you start building them in the real world. Something powerful happens when you reclaim your energy. Your focus sharpens, your standards rise. You stop waiting, you start choosing. That's how a high-value man navigates the world. That's how masculine energy naturally becomes magnetic without effort. If you truly want to attract women, you need to let go of imaginary bonds and demand real presence. If you truly want love, learn to fall in love with reality, not your thoughts. Don't feed stories that keep you stuck. Be disciplined with your mind. Be selective with your attention. That's not cold, that's clarity. And clarity is what finally opens the door to something real. If this hits a nerve, don't just scroll past. Act. Comment right now. I choose reality over fantasy. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and remind yourself every day. If she's only in your mind and not in your life, it's not love. It's a lesson. 3. You're not valuing your own attention. Not valuing your attention explains more about your situation than any psychology trick ever could. When a woman occupies your mind without contact, without effort, without presence, it doesn't mean she's special. It means your mind is unguarded. Your inner space is unprotected. Your attention, your most valuable currency, is being handed out without thought. Old Stoic wisdom warned about this long before modern dating existed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Understand this, and you'll find strength." Yet too many men today give that power away freely, letting thoughts loop, memories replay, and imagined conversations drain their energy. Meanwhile, the other person invests nothing. And that's not love. That's neglecting your own authority. Attention isn't free. Attention is life force. Attention is time you'll never get back. In today's world, with endless distractions and emotional availability often mistaken for depth, men are subtly trained to romanticize fixation instead of mastering focus. Stoicism, at its core, is about reclaiming that focus. An iron mind doesn't chase clarity from silence, it creates clarity through discipline. When you allow someone to occupy your mental space without contribution, you're teaching yourself a dangerous habit: that your peace is negotiable, that your thoughts are open access, that anyone can move in without paying rent. Seneca warned, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Yet this is exactly what happens when you replace someone who is no longer present. Your mind starts living in a future that never comes, or a past that can't be changed. The instruction is simple but uncompromising. Guard your attention like you guard your time, your finances, and your principles. An iron mind understands that what you dwell on shapes who you become. Stoic wisdom teaches that peace isn't found by controlling others, but by mastering yourself. So if someone lingers in your mind without contact, consistency, or effort, the lesson isn't about her. It's about reclaiming ownership of your inner world. In today's dating culture, where endless options create endless confusion, the man who wins is the man who chooses where his attention goes. Stoicism isn't emotional withdrawal, it's emotional precision. It's knowing when to engage and when to let go. Epictetus reminded us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In modern terms, stop explaining your silence. Stop justifying your distance. Stop feeding thoughts that don't feed you back. Victory in life isn't loud. It's calm. It's selective. It's rooted in an iron mind that values focus over fantasy, direction over rumination, self-respect over mental noise. When you truly understand this, you stop asking why someone occupies your mind and start asking why you let them. That single shift is where mastery begins. For it's not about her, it's about you. It's not about her, and you need to stop pretending it is. The moment a woman stays on your mind without contact, without effort, without presence, the real story isn't female psychology. It's about reclaiming your own mental authority. It's your inner world calling for attention. So let's be honest about why this happens. Why do men fixate on women who pull away? Why does silence feel magnetic? It's not her mystery. It's the empty space inside you searching for meaning, direction, and validation. When a man lacks purpose, a mission that drives him out of bed, or self-respect rooted in action, he unconsciously fills that void with a woman and calls it connection. He turns her into the center, the reward, the reason. And that's where attraction quietly falls apart. No amount of psychology can replace a life with momentum. No understanding of female psychology will save a man who has nothing pushing him forward. So don't romanticize obsession. Don't mistake fixation for how to fall in love. Love isn't built on absence or longing alone. It's built on strength meeting strength, direction meeting direction. When a man has no goals bigger than himself, No work that challenges him, no discipline that grounds him. He waits. He watches. He hopes. That waiting turns into attachment. Attachment turns into overthinking. Overthinking turns into emotional dependency, which women sense instinctively, long before a word is exchanged. Women don't want to be your purpose. They don't want to solve your restlessness. They want to join a man who already knows where he's going. A man whose life is full enough that her presence is a choice, not a necessity. That's the quiet truth behind female psychology most men miss. Here's the uncomfortable instruction you need to hear. Stop chasing clarity from someone who hasn't chosen you. Stop assigning meaning where none was given. Be a man with direction. Be a man with standards. Be a man whose days are structured around growth, not waiting for a message. The moment you reclaim your mission, obsession fades. The fog lifts. Psychology tricks lose their power, not because you mastered her, but because you mastered yourself. That's how attraction really works. That's how you fall in love without losing yourself. When a man builds something real, his body, his craft, his legacy, women don't linger in his mind as unanswered questions. They show up as companions. Once you understand that, everything changes. Not just in dating, but in how you see yourself, how you move through the world, and how calm, focused men naturally become the ones others want to follow. Not fix, not save, not complete. If this hit home, don't just nod and move on. Take action. Like this video. Subscribe for grounded wisdom. Engage with the channel. Then comment this below to lock it in and remind yourself who you're becoming. I build my purpose first and let the right woman join my path. 5. Attraction isn't about availability. It's about value. Attraction isn't about being available. It's about being valuable. That's the first truth you need to accept. If a woman occupies your mind without contact, without momentum, without movement, when you obsess over her, you're not showing interest. You're broadcasting emptiness. You're telling the universe and her that nothing else in your life carries enough weight to hold your attention. That your days only feel meaningful when she crosses your mind. That your sense of purpose has quietly shifted from your path to her presence. Here's the hard truth most men don't want to face. Emptiness doesn't attract. It repels. A high-value man understands this instinctively. He doesn't chase to feel alive. He builds and attraction follows. Women can sense it even from a distance. Even without words, women are deeply attuned to emotional pressure. When you place her at the center of your inner world, she immediately feels the weight. The expectation, the fantasy, the silent hope that she will give your days color and direction. That pressure doesn't feel romantic. It feels heavy. No one wants to be someone else's entire world, especially when they never agreed to that role. Don't confuse intensity with connection. Don't mistake fixation for depth. That's not how you attract women. That's how you quietly push them away. Here's what most men misunderstand about female psychology. Attraction isn't built on constant availability. It's built on value. And value is demonstrated through scarcity, through priority, through self-investment. Be clear, scarcity isn't about playing games. It means your time is already claimed by a life that matters to you. It means your energy is directed, not waiting. It means your masculine energy is grounded in purpose, not anticipation. When a man invests in himself, his health, his craft, his mission, he naturally becomes selective. That selectivity creates gravity. That gravity is what attracts women. Don't make her the reward. Be the man who is already rewarded by his own progress. Be the man whose days are full, whose calendar reflects ambition, whose habits signal self respect. That's what a high value man looks like in real life. Not loud, not desperate, focused, calm, moving forward. When you do this, you stop orbiting women and start inviting them into your orbit. That shift changes everything. Attraction grows when a woman feels she's joining a journey, not becoming the destination. She's drawn to direction, to consistency, to a man building something meaningful and inviting her to walk beside him, not carry him. That is masculine energy at its core: presence without pressure, strength without demand, interest without attachment. So don't wait, don't hover, don't obsess. Build, invest, move. Become the man whose absence is felt because his presence is valuable, not because he is constantly available. That is how attraction works. That is how you attract women with clarity and confidence. And that is why a high value man never needs to chase. His life already speaks for him. 6. A high value man doesn't have time to obsess. Here's a truth most men learn too late. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. When a woman occupies your mind without contact, without presence, without contributing to your life, it's not connection, it's leakage. Your attention is flowing outward instead of being anchored inward. A man who constantly replays conversations, imagines outcomes, and waits emotionally becomes transparent energetically, even if he never sends a message. Focus is currency. Attention is power. When you spend it unconsciously, you feel it drain. And so does she. This is where old Stoic wisdom comes in with brutal clarity. You don't control other people, but you fully control where your mind resides. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you'll find strength. When your thoughts orbit her, your strength leaks. Your posture softens. Your presence thins. Women don't respond to words first, they respond to orientation. Intuition picks up what logic misses. Not because women are mysterious, but because humans feel focus before they hear speech. When a man's life shrinks to emotional fixation, attraction doesn't fade from cruelty, it fades from imbalance. A man with purpose feels different. He moves differently. He listens without leaning. He stands without chasing. That's why a high value man doesn't obsess, not as a rule, but as a byproduct of direction. He's occupied. He's invested elsewhere. He's building something that demands his full attention. His goals require him. His health disciplines him. His future calls him forward. His legacy pulls him out of mental loops. A woman may pass through his thoughts, but she doesn't camp there. She doesn't rent mental space for free because he understands something most men never learn. Mental real estate is sacred. Guard it, allocate it, invest it. This is iron mind thinking. This is stoicism applied in real life, not on paper. Seneca warned, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Obsession is premature suffering. It's living in imagined outcomes instead of real momentum. In modern life, where messages are instant, validation is addictive, and distraction is constant, discipline of thought is the new masculine edge. Don't monitor. Don't wonder. Don't wait. Act in your own life. Build gravity. Let silence work. Let absence speak. When you stop chasing clarity, clarity arrives. When you stop centering her, you recenter yourself. That's not withdrawal, it's alignment. That's old Stoic wisdom applied cleanly. Repeat it until it sticks. Attention is power. Focus is leadership. Direction creates attraction. This is the Stoic way at its core. Build the iron mind. Choose what you think about. Choose what you feed. Choose what you grow. Watch how everything else responds. Not because you tried, but because you finally stopped leaking energy into places that were never meant to hold it. If this hits a nerve, don't scroll away. Most men never cross this line. They stay stuck in their heads, replaying thoughts, leaking energy, giving away focus for free. A high value man doesn't do that. He reclaims his mind, he puts his goals first, he owns his mental space and protects it fiercely. That's where real attraction begins. So if you're ready to stop obsessing and start leading your own life, drop this in the comments right now. I take my focus back and I build my future first. Like this video, subscribe for more grounded, clear psychology, and remind yourself every day, what you focus on, you empower. 7. Stop giving away your mind. This is the real shift you must make. If she occupies your mind even without contact, what you're feeling isn't mystery or fate, it's unresolved attention. Psychology explains this clearly. The mind hates open loops, especially when female psychology mixes presence with absence, warmth with silence, interest with distance. Your thoughts keep circling, not because she's doing something magical, but because you're letting someone who isn't investing, communicating, or fully present occupy prime mental space. That's the mistake you must correct. Don't confuse constant thinking with connection. Don't mistake silence for depth. Be honest. If someone isn't showing up consistently, your mind fills in the gaps. That's how attachment grows without substance. That's how confusion masquerades as chemistry. Psychology tricks work best when you don't realize they're at work. One of the oldest patterns in female psychology is that uncertainty creates intensity. Not because women are trying to control you, but because the human brain bonds harder when clarity is missing. If you want to understand how to fall in love in a healthy way, you first need to understand how obsession forms in unhealthy ways. Be disciplined with your attention. Your focus isn't free entertainment for people offering fragments. Your attention is sacred. When you give it to someone who doesn't reciprocate, you're training your nervous system to crave what it doesn't receive. That's not romance, that's conditioning. Don't chase emotional closure where there's no investment. Don't replay conversations that never happened. Be grounded. Be selective. That is strength. If she stays in your mind without contact, it means your mind is trying to resolve imbalance, not build intimacy. Psychology tricks lose their power the moment you stop feeding them with imagination. Redirect your energy back to yourself, back to purpose, back to people who meet you where you are. That's how to fall in love with clarity, not chaos. That's how to apply female psychology wisely, not emotionally. When you stop giving away your mind, the spell breaks. Your attention returns to you. Perspective comes with it. Here's the quiet truth most men learn too late. The right connection doesn't consume your thoughts. In silence, it grows through presence, communication, and mutual effort. Be calm. Be decisive. Guard your mind like you guard your time. That's the shift. That's the lesson. Once you learn it, psychology tricks no longer run you. You run yourself. 8. The pain feels real, but the pattern is already set. The pain feels real, and the pattern is already set. And both of those things can be true at the same time. Let's talk about the pain because I know it hurts and I won't dismiss it. The longing feels real. The wondering feels real. The imagining feels real. You replay moments that matter. not because they were complete, but because they were unfinished. You ask yourself, what if she reached out? What if she changed her mind? What if this time it's different? Don't ignore those thoughts, but don't worship them either. Be honest. Those questions don't come from clarity. They come from absence, from silence, from your mind trying to rewrite an ending that's already happened. It won't be different. And that statement isn't cruelty, it's freedom because the pattern is already set. That's the part most men struggle to accept. Patterns don't lie. Words fluctuate. Feelings shift. Promises fade. But patterns stay consistent. She's already shown you who she is through her behavior, through her timing, through her effort or the lack of it. Believe her, not the version you imagine late at night, not the version you hope she might become. Believe the version she actually is. When nothing is being said, when nothing is being done, when you're left alone with your thoughts, that's reality speaking. You must listen. Don't confuse emotional intensity with emotional depth. Don't mistake anticipation for connection. Be grounded. A high-value man doesn't build his future on potential alone. He observes, assesses, and then decides. That is masculine energy in its calmest form. That's how you attract women without chasing uncertainty. When you keep holding space for someone who's already stepped away, you're not being patient. You're being unavailable to your own growth, and that matters. The pain you feel isn't proof she was the one. It's proof your mind bonded to possibility. That happens when attention is given without consistency in return, when effort flows one way, when imagination fills gaps. Reality refuses to close. Don't fight the pain, understand it. Pain is a signal, not a command. You must feel it without letting it decide for you. That's how a high-value man moves forward with dignity. Be disciplined with your focus. Be selective with your emotional investment. Masculine energy isn't loud, dramatic, or reactive. It's steady, self-directed, and knows when to stop feeding what does not grow. If you want to attract women who respect you, you must first respect your own boundaries. If you want to attract women who choose you freely, you must stop waiting to be chosen by someone who already showed hesitation. That is the shift. The moment you stop arguing with the pattern, you regain your power. The moment peace begins is the moment you stop seeking closure from her and start seeking alignment with yourself. Be calm. Be decisive. Let the pattern stand as the truth. When you do, something powerful happens. Your mind clears, your energy returns, and the version of you that women are naturally drawn to starts showing up again. That is masculine energy. That is how a high-value man lives. That is how you move on without losing yourself. If this message hits home, pause for a second. Breathe. Then take action. Like this video, subscribe for more grounded psychology and quiet strength, and comment below to lock this truth into your mind. I trust patterns over promises. I choose clarity over hope. Say it publicly. Own it. The pain feels real, but the pattern is already set. Longing, wondering, imagining different outcomes only keeps you stuck. She has already shown you who she is, not the version you wish for, but the version that exists. When you accept that, your mind finally settles, and when your mind settles, your power returns. 9. You can't lose something you never had. You're holding on because letting go feels like losing. Here's the first truth you must accept. If you want clarity and peace, you cannot lose something you never truly had. When a woman occupies your mind without contact, without consistency, without real shared ground, What you're grieving isn't her. It's an idea, a projection, a story you built to fill a gap you didn't want to face. Men at this stage know this pain well. It doesn't come from romance. It comes from unfinished business within yourself. From moments where silence was mistaken for meaning and absence was mistaken for depth. The longer you hold on, the deeper the void becomes, because you're feeding it with imagination instead of substance, hope instead of direction, emotional memory instead of forward motion. As Marcus Aurelius warned, you suffer more in imagination than in reality. That is exactly what happens when the mind loops on someone who is no longer present because it prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar growth. That's where old Stoic wisdom draws a hard line. Attachment without reality isn't love, it's avoidance. It's the refusal to return to yourself and rebuild what was neglected. Real strength isn't found in replaying what could have been. It's found in constructing what must be built now. In modern life, this trap is more dangerous than ever. Technology allows absence to feel close, memories to feel alive, and silence to feel like potential. But don't confuse access to memory with access to truth. If something were real, it wouldn't require constant mental effort to keep it alive. It would meet you halfway, through action, through consistency, through presence. Seneca said it plainly. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. This lesson repeats across centuries because men keep falling into the same pattern, mistaking emotional intensity for emotional value. Here is the decisive instruction you need to hear. Stop negotiating with ghosts. Stop romanticizing what never stabilized. Stop investing your focus into something that never invested back. Hope without action isn't optimism, it's procrastination dressed as patience. Every day you linger there, you delay real progress, real relationships, real self respect. This is where Stoicism stops being a slogan and becomes practice. Stoicism teaches you to direct your energy toward what's within your control. Her absence isn't within your control, but your discipline is. Your direction is. Your standards are. An iron mind doesn't beg the past for closure. It creates closure through forward motion, through structure, through purpose, through deliberate action. You must understand this at a deeper psychological level. The mind clings because it wants meaning, not because the person was exceptional, but because you attached meaning to the possibility. When that possibility dies, the ego panics because it feels exposed. But exposure is not danger. Exposure is an invitation to rebuild on truth instead of illusion. This is where old Stoic wisdom reminds us. Longing is not proof of value, intensity is not proof of compatibility, and memory is not proof of connection. Real connection is reciprocal, grounded, and calm, not obsessive, draining, or confusing. If she remains on your mind without contact, it means your mind is seeking resolution, not reunion. Resolution doesn't come from reaching out. It comes from redirecting your focus toward real inputs that produce real outputs. Men don't heal by waiting, they heal by building, by moving, by committing to something larger than a single emotional story. Epictetus put it simply, don't seek for things to happen the way you want them to, but rather wish that what happens happens the way it happens, then you will be happy. In modern terms, that means stop resisting reality and start aligning with it. Reality has already answered you through silence, distance, and inconsistency. Your job isn't to reinterpret those signals, but to respect them. This is where Stoicism becomes practical. An iron mind doesn't chase clarity from people who offer confusion. It generates clarity internally and acts accordingly. Letting go is not loss, it's liberation. It's the moment you stop bleeding energy into something that never stabilized and start investing it into your health, your mission, your craft, your relationships that actually show up, and your daily structure. Fulfillment doesn't arrive through emotional fixation. It arrives through discipline and momentum. The man who understands this stops asking, "What did it mean?" and starts asking, "What am I building now?" That shift alone changes everything because the mind cannot obsess and advance at the same time. Every hour spent replaying the past is an hour stolen from your future. Old Stoic wisdom never told men to suppress emotion. It taught them to master it, to put it in service of action rather than fantasy. Here is the final instruction you need to carry forward. If she stays on your mind without contact, it's time to return to yourself, to close the mental loop, to replace hope with execution, to replace waiting with movement, to sharpen your iron mind through daily discipline. When your life becomes full, the ghosts lose their power. When your direction is clear, the past becomes quiet. That is not bitterness, that is freedom. That is stoicism in real life. Calm, grounded, decisive, and unshakable. 10. Redirect your energy. Redirect your energy because that is the real lesson hiding beneath all the noise. If she stays on your mind without contact, here's what you must understand. You stop. Not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. You stop checking her social media as if it holds answers. It never promised to. You stop replaying old conversations as if clarity lives in the past. You stop wondering what she's doing, who she's with, or what she might be thinking. That mental habit feels productive, but it produces nothing. That is not intuition speaking, that is attachment seeking relief. Be honest with yourself. If she wanted to be present, she would be. If she wanted to reach out, she already would have. Even if she thinks about you occasionally, thinking without action changes nothing, which makes it irrelevant to your life right now. Don't confuse emotional residue with connection. This is a common trap, clearly explained in female psychology and often misunderstood by men who haven't learned these patterns yet. The mind clings to unfinished stories, not because they are meaningful, but because they are unresolved. And unresolved does not mean valuable. You must redirect that energy deliberately, not passively. Idle energy turns inward and becomes obsession. Put it back into your body. Train harder, walk longer, sleep deeper. Put it into your work so your days feel earned again. Put it into your goals so your future feels louder than your memories. Put it into the people who actually show up for you without confusion, delay, or mixed signals. That is how you reset your internal balance. That is how attraction really works, even though no one explains it plainly. Female psychology responds to presence, direction, and self-containment, not emotional hovering. When you remove your attention, you don't lose power, you reclaim it. These patterns aren't about manipulation, they're about alignment. You don't chase clarity, you become clear. You don't wait to be chosen, you choose your own direction. Here's the quiet truth about how to fall in love the right way. Love grows where attention is returned, not where it's wasted. When someone lives rent, free in your mind, without showing up in your life, that's your signal not to try harder, but to step back. Be disciplined with your focus. Be selective with your emotional investment. Don't romanticize absence. Don't reward silence with imagination. That is how men stay stuck. Redirecting your energy is how men move forward. When your life becomes fuller, stronger, and more grounded, one of two things happens. Either she fades naturally or the dynamic shifts, without a single word spoken. Either way, you win, because your center no longer depends on anyone else. 11. Living men attract, while deepening the message, sharpening the contrast, and maintaining a calm but serious authority. Living's men attract. That line isn't poetry, it's a law. You must understand it. If someone stays on your mind without showing up in your life, the solution isn't chasing. They way forward is building a life so full there's no room for ghosts, no space left for imagined conversations, no oxygen for people who disappear and only resurface in your thoughts. Don't underestimate how powerful fullness is. A full life crowds out confusion. A full life leaves no vacancy for fantasies. That is the shift. When your days are packed with purpose, you stop romanticizing silence. You stop assigning meaning to gaps. You stop mistaking absence for mystery. Be clear. People who don't communicate are not puzzles to be solved. They are signals to be read. A high-value man reads signals accurately. He doesn't explain them away. He doesn't reinterpret them to protect hope. He accepts what is happening, not what he wishes were happening. That is masculine energy in its calmest form. You become so focused on your mission that women become a bonus, not the goal. That distinction changes everything internally. When women are the goal, your behavior bends. Your decisions hesitate. Your self-respect negotiates. But when your mission is the center, your spine stays straight. You show up to your life first. You build. You improve. You sharpen. You move forward whether anyone is watching or not. That is how you attract women without chasing them. Attraction isn't created by effort aimed outward. It's created by alignment built inward. A high-value man doesn't orbit desire. Desire orbits him. Not because he demands it, but because his life carries weight. Weight creates gravity. When that happens, everything changes. Not overnight, not dramatically, but unmistakably. You stop chasing conversations that go nowhere. You stop waiting for replies that never come. You stop hoping time will magically turn inconsistency into commitment. Hope without evidence is emotional debt. Don't live on credit. Be disciplined. You start living. You wake up with intention. You move your body. You engage your work. You pursue goals that demand your attention and reward your effort. As your life expands, the mental space once occupied by someone who wasn't present begins to collapse on its own. Not through force, but through irrelevance. Living men attract because they are occupied with living. They don't beg for attention because their life already demands it. They don't obsess because obsession is a symptom of emptiness, not depth. They don't fill their minds with people who don't fill their lives, because that trade is always a loss. Be honest with yourself. If someone lives rent-free in your head but contributes nothing to your days, that isn't connection. That's imbalance. And imbalance always costs you more than you think. A man who understands masculine energy protects his attention like a resource, because it is one. Where attention goes, life follows. You must choose where yours goes. They choose themselves every single time. Not out of ego, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. That is the difference most men miss. Choosing yourself doesn't mean rejecting others. It means refusing to abandon yourself. It means you don't stay emotionally invested where clarity is absent. You don't linger where effort isn't matched. You don't perform for someone who isn't participating. Don't confuse patience with self erasure. Be patient with people who show consistency. Be decisive with people who show confusion. That is how a high value man moves through the world, without drama, without regret. Here's the quiet truth most men learn late. The moment you stop trying to attract women, you actually start attracting women. What they respond to isn't pursuit, it's presence, direction, grounded masculine energy that doesn't rush, doesn't plead, and doesn't chase validation. Living men attract because they are not available for emotional limbo. They don't hover. They don't wait for potential. They engage with reality, and reality rewards that. Don't romanticize someone who doesn't choose you. Don't build castles in silence. Don't mistake distance for depth. That is how men lose years without noticing. Be the man whose calendar is full, whose goals are clear, whose standards are calm and unspoken. Be the man who understands that attraction is a byproduct of a well lived life, not the purpose of it. That is how you attract women who add to your life instead of consuming it. That is how a high value man protects his peace without becoming closed. That is masculine energy at its healthiest. Living men attract because they are moving forward. Anything alive, anything aligned, anything real responds to motion. When you live fully, you don't need to wonder why someone stays on your mind. They won't. Your life will be too full, too grounded, and too meaningful to be haunted by someone who chose not to stay. Conclusion: if she always stays on your mind without contact, it means this psychology tricks, brother. I'm glad you stayed until the end. If this message hit you, it means you're already waking up. Here's the advice I want you to take with you. Stop arguing with silence. Start listening to reality. When someone lives in your head but not in your life, that's not connection. It's a signal to come back to yourself, to your standards, to your mission. You don't need to force feelings, chase clarity, or wait for attention to feel worthy. You build a life so full, so grounded, so disciplined that silence no longer tempts you. Choose actions over imagination, presence over hope, self-respect over longing. The moment you do that, your mind clears, your energy returns, your path sharpens. Keep building, keep growing, keep choosing yourself. I'll see you in the next one.